Thank you for attending this training. Welcome. Empowering evaluations are central to the Toastmasters experience. Today, 5 members from the Saturday Morning Live Club, an advanced club focusing on evaluations, will present on different aspects of evaluations, how you can give better evaluations and get them, and what improving evaluation skills mean both for your club and for you personally. Carol Duling, SML's current president, will introduce the speakers and will moderate a question and answer period toward the end of the session. Please welcome Carol Duling.
Welcome. Distinguished Toastmaster Keith Hardy is a charter member of Saturday Morning Live and has been in Toastmasters for nearly 25 years. He won the District 6 evaluation contest in 2011. He has taught evaluation and performance review skills classes for the last 23 years. Keith encourages you to speak your truth. Please welcome Keith Hardy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Would you do me a favor? Would you turn to someone next to you and say, "You are awesome"?
Awesome. You are awesome. You are awesome.
You are awesome. Thank you so much for including me. Fellow Toastmasters, you have already given an evaluation. This morning we're going to focus on the skills of evaluation, but we're going to take you one level up. And my focus is on speaking your truth. Because when you evaluate a person's speech, that speaker does not need you to give him or her a pat on the head. They need you to give them true, specific praise and true alternative paths to success. True, specific praise and true alternative paths to success. I want you to speak your truth, or to follow the words of Sarah Bareilles' current song, Brave, to be brave in giving your feedback to a speaker. And I focus speaking your truth in 2 areas, from your professional experience and from your personal reaction. Your professional experience, you bring to the table as an evaluator something unique. And never downplay that. From what you've done or what you currently do professionally, you can bring some excellent feedback to a speaker to enhance his or her speech. In my club at Saturday Morning Live, in December, I gave a speech, I read a story. And as Carol will talk about later on, we do a 3-member evaluation team. So one of my 3 members is our member, Perry Carter. And Perry's professional background is from radio broadcast and also working with people who are professional storytellers or animated movie script readers, the people who do the voices behind the characters. And so Perry gave me some excellent feedback, block enunciation, and technical terms that I had never heard about. And he enhanced my story reading skills from that evaluation. Tim Kelley, who you'll hear from later in our panel today, has many years of leadership experience in retail and other industries. And Tim gives excellent speeches on personal leadership, but he also brings that experience with some of his feedback to speakers and how they can enhance their presentation. Pat Croal, who you'll hear from later on, and other members in our club have a sales background. So they can give feedback on how you couch your message to make it more sellable or more appealing to the listener. And other members bring their teaching, their performance, and other backgrounds and talk about enunciation and how your words can flow and how your body movements can mirror your message a little more. So that's where you bring your professional experience, whether it's from information technology, whether it's from health professions, whether it's teaching, whatever your professional experience is, something that you've learned in the years of doing, and then the workshops and the certifications you've gained, that you can bring that feedback to the table, to a speaker whose speech you're evaluating. Personal reaction. So as you learn in Toastmasters, our evaluations are what? Are they truth, are they gospel, or are they our opinion?
Opinion.
They're our opinion, exactly. Now, it's an educated opinion sometimes, and those of us who've been in Toastmasters and other learning environments working on our speaking skills, we have sometimes more of an educated opinion, but it's always your opinion. But your personal reaction is your truth. And what a speaker needs to hear from you is how you reacted to his or her speech. Whether you're just helping them move along their Toastmasters journey, or whether their presentation is something they plan to give outside of Toastmasters, and you can give them some good feedback on how it hit you. So of course, when you give a lot of true praise, well, especially connected to your words emotionally. And when you talked about your child, and I've heard a lot of speeches where people talk about their family, and they use those phrases, those loving words, or some description about the red-colored hair or the brown-colored hair, or the little birthmark. People like talk about my birthmark here. Talk about the birthmark on your face. And so those phrases, those words that pull you into the speech and help you connect with the speaker. So you want to give that feedback. Or were there some emotions that were shared in the speech that irritated you a little bit? Those are the more politically based speeches, the speeches about those topics you're not supposed to talk about, religion and politics and other topics. But people sometimes need to give that message. So in one of my clubs, now those who don't know me, I'm a moderate who leans toward the democratic viewpoint of life, and I have friends who lean more toward the conservative viewpoint of life. And so I have in one of my clubs a member who's very conservative, and he'll give speeches from that value system. And so he and I sometimes don't see eye to eye in political topics. And so it teaches me something I learned very early in Toastmasters, long, long ago when I joined in 1989. And that is, you have to be able to give a good speech evaluation sometimes about a topic you totally disagree with. And maybe some of you have been in that situation before. But again, that's a personal reaction. How did you do in giving that feedback? There are the brain jumpers, I call those. Give that reaction to something that made you really think, a new topic. So a friend of mine talked about the value, and in her speech at work company, US Bank, she talked about the value of, let's just say, the personal flushing system in your body. Now, and it wasn't gross, because those are words that you don't really want to get into the bathroom humor. My friend Dan Gruntner talks about that. But she talked about the value of water, and why water helps with the various systems in your body. And even though I studied health, it was some new knowledge. It's what I call a brain jumper, an aha. And I like to give people praise for taking me down a thinking path I've never gone on before. So that's a great personal reaction to give. But this feedback, I'm sure, isn't just for when you're evaluating speeches. It's for any of the evaluation roles that you can take on. General evaluator, how do we do with leading a meeting? Do I have professional experience in leading meetings? Timer, what do we usually do when we're a timer? We'd say, he spoke for 5 minutes and 75 seconds, or whatever it is. But talk about how did we use our time? Where did we use it well in the meeting? Where did we get off track? Because a suggestion when we got off track, like I'm doing right now. Thanks, Glen. So, and when you're an counter, grammarian, when do we use a filler words? Here are some suggestions on how to avoid using those filler words when you give an counter report. So expand beyond the norm, even with some of the evaluation team roles, and speak your truth from your professional background and your personal reaction. Whether you're timer, general evaluator, counter, and definitely when you're speech evaluator. So fellow Toastmasters, as I wrap up, I can encourage you to do what Sarah Bareilles asked us in her song Brave, to say the words, to give the specific praise, and give the specific alternative paths to success, so that you can speak your truth and empower others through your evaluation. And moderator.
Thank you. That was awesome. going beyond the rubric. You would think that providing speech evaluations would be easy. After all, Toastmasters International provides us with a list of questions tailored to each project. But it's vital to know when and how to go beyond the rubric. Have you ever evaluated or perhaps even given a speech for which the questions turned out to be not so good a fit for the speech? I know I have. Sometimes the speech just evolves in a different direction. And it's important at that point to evaluate the speech on its own merits, to view the questions as an aid to helping you provide targeted feedback, instead of a list of qualifications that the speaker needs to meet. Also, focusing on the questions on the page can sometimes distract your attention away from the speaker, from paying attention to the speaker and what they're doing. It can even turn into speech bingo. There is a visual aid. A pause effect. Moreover, if you are spending your time filling out the evaluation form while the person is talking, the effort that it takes you to compose your words takes away from the attention that you can focus on the speaker. So, you might want to take your notes using this powerful tool, a blank page. Just jot a few notes for yourself quickly as you can. You will later flesh them out, frame them for the speaker, and transfer them to the manual. It means your brain has less that it actually has to get through in that allotted time. Structuring your notes can help you provide even better feedback. Hold that for a minute. I want you to think for a moment. What is something that you want to accomplish as an evaluator? Consistently. You can identify a note-taking strategy that will support you in that goal. Now to my trade. Suppose you struggle to consistently use the sandwich method. I did this at one point. If you take your notes as positives, suggestions, and more positives, when you go to deliver your evaluation, you will automatically deliver them as positives, some suggestions for improvement, and some more positives. That's an easy solution to a fairly common problem. One accomplished evaluator described his note-taking strategy in Toastmasters magazine. At the top of his page, he would make notes about the organization of the speech. What were the main points the speaker said he or she was going to present on? Did the speech follow those points? So just keeping track of was it organized. Down in the bottom, he had a quadrant: content and delivery, strengths, opportunities. And dividing it like this meant that he was sure to pay about equal attention to content and delivery, because otherwise his tendency would be to focus just on content. And it made sure that he had lots of positives, but also identified an area or two for improvement. So the structure of his note-taking encouraged him, prompted him to give a thorough evaluation. Now I want you to consider a completely different possible way to use the notes to support yourself. Imagine that what you want to do is work on the interpersonal relationship aspects of giving an evaluation. The manual is good about asking questions on content and delivery. but it can't frame the evaluation in terms of the speaker's goals or their history as a speaker, their development. We as evaluators do that. So, Ravi Rai, on his 10th journey through the Competent Communicator Manual, needs different feedback than Mei Lee on her first 4 speeches. So, let's imagine that we write down some of those relationship framing questions ahead of time, just to wrap our minds around it. We would say, May is on her 4th speech. So her next speeches coming up would be body language and vocal variety. So comments on those issues would be more immediately applicable than ones that are further out, so that would be a good place to focus attention. Because she's an early speaker, it would be important to praise effort rather than results, because when you praise effort, it encourages more effort, which then helps with development. And it's very important to point out that she's come a long way already, 4 speeches, and look at how far she's evolved since her icebreaker. Back to the presenting on Ravi, evaluating Ravi giving a speech, it might be very important to say, Ravi Rai is a veteran speaker, so I'm holding him to a higher standard. Otherwise, he might freak out the newer members who don't know that and are going, why in the world is she raking Ravi over the goals? That was a great speech. All of us can improve as evaluators by reflecting on what we want to accomplish as evaluators and structuring supports so that our process prompts us to do what it is we really want it to do. Thank you. Our next speaker actually is Ravi Rai. Come on up. I'm going to move this out of the way. Ravi Rai has been a Toastmaster for 12 years. He believes that evaluations made Toastmasters unique as a group. In 2011, he placed 3rd in the District 6 evaluations. Please, again, welcome Ravi Rai.
Yes, I did place 3rd, right behind Keith Hardy. So I always look up to Keith Hardy for his evaluation skills. In fact, you'll hear from Tim, who actually won the evaluation contest in a different district. So those are 2 people first I start to look for. And then everyone in the club gives me some ideas. So what is it about evaluations? And whenever I think about evaluations, I think of a story that I want to share with you. It is the story about an elephant and 6 blind men. Imagine you have a big elephant in the room, well, somewhere, and each blind man is asked to describe the elephant. They are blind. They don't know what the elephant looks like. One of them holds onto the tusk and says, this elephant is like a solid pipe. The other blind person hugs the trunk, says, no, I think the elephant is like a tree branch of a tree branch. One blind person hugs the legs of the elephant, says, I think elephant is like a pillar. One of them is feeling the belly, the big one says, I think the elephant is like a giant wall. There is one blind man holding on to the tail, says, elephant is like a rope. So, my fellow Toastmasters, the question is, which one of this blind person is speaking the truth, or are they describing the elephant? The answer is, all of them are right. You and I are blind people, and our elephant represents the speech. The difference is that we have a vision. We can look at it, and yet, I bet in this room, each one of you is interpreting my speech in a very different way. Some of you take it for what the value of the speech is, just a plain evaluation. As Carol described, a new member, 4 speeches, barely made out of that icebreaker where the legs were shaking, the lectern was almost going to be broken apart, versus some people, and I'm not going to name them, who are on their 10th speech, maybe actually it's the 15th speech, 15th journey through the competent communicator. But mind you, each evaluation is like that blind evaluation. Some of you will see the tree trunk, some of you will see the rope, and some of you will simply say it's a giant wall. And each one of you is correct. And why? Because each one presents a perspective. Each one of you see things differently. And that is where the dynamic of club membership holds together. It comes together to help the speaker. When a member gives a speech, imagine you have given speeches, you put in a lot of effort. You want to make sure that everything you have prepared for comes to the front of the room. And your evaluator is going to give you one perspective. If your club has 10 members, 10 perspectives, 10 different views. But each view is very important. And that is where the blindness of the situation becomes very important. When you give your evaluation, you are encouraging the member to give more speeches, go towards professionalism, which is what the 10th speech is. Once you have given the 10th speech, the advanced speeches. So each time one perspective is presented, you build a solid foundation for the speaker. Now imagine a group of evaluators. I'm not saying everyone is giving formal evaluation, but the small slips of paper that you pass at the end of the meeting gives your perspective. I always look at the stage presence of the speaker. Is the speaker really moving around well? Is the speaker using the prop, maybe prop 1 over there, prop 2 here? Is the speaker moving between these? You may be thinking about the hand gestures, the facial expressions. Is the speaker really smiling when he should be? Or is he just being serious and giving a dry humor, which most of us technical people do? So all that is important. A few years ago, I gave a speech titled, I Love Donuts. Some of you may have remembered that. Believe me, the speech did not start with a donut speech. It was about picking on my coworkers, the different cubicle systems we have. And one part of the speech was about donuts. When I gave the speech to my club audience, they loved just the donut part. They didn't care about who was really annoying. They didn't care about my whole office setup. But because of the feedback, the whole speech turned into a I love donut speech. Second speech is about Norwegian. I do look like a Norwegian, don't I? Thank you. Well, the speech was not really about the cool Norwegian looks. It was more about how I see people in a different way. Irish, Norwegian, we all form a melting pot in this country. But somehow the audience really loved the Norwegian aspect of my speech. And the whole speech became a Norwegian, the cool Norwegian looks. I have that. So this is how the club helped a speaker develop their speeches. I never claimed to be a humorous speaker. I never really tried one. I wanted to be a motivational speaker. My club never got inspired. So I turned to humor. I enjoyed my speech, and so does the club. And that is where the power of club atmosphere comes into picture, because each one of you holds that power of evaluation. Each one of you can take, as Carol said, beyond the basics. Take your evaluation skills beyond the basics to really build the speaker up, because that is where the speaker wants to be. I've tried to distribute a method called Saturday morning night evaluation methods. If you don't have one, there are plenty of handouts. If you want to really go beyond the basics, one of the 10 points could be used. Let's say one person wants to really show how to care for the that you really care. And your evaluation will show how much you care. Or how about positive reinforcement? So there are 10 points. These are all part of the art of effective evaluation. And in Saturday Morning Live, each time we have a panel evaluation where the speaker sits here and there are 3 people who are giving their evaluation. They are following one of these points. Please do take this and think about how you can improve your evaluation climate using these 10 points. If you are the general evaluator and if you have been in Toastmasters for at least 1 year, look at what the other evaluators are covering in their speeches, speech evaluation. You as a general evaluator can point out the strength they have in their evaluation and then cover what was not covered for the speaker. When you combine all these effects, the blindness is no longer there. Your perspectives rule. And that big elephant in that room, or anywhere it is really taken one piece apart. Madam Moderator.
As a speaker, you want an evaluation that meets your specific needs. One that identifies things you can do to improve, as well as motivates you to new heights. Tim Kelley will now cover a few things you can do when you are the speaker to ensure you get the feedback you need. Please welcome Tim Kelley.
Thank you, Carol. Well, I hope everybody found the right room this morning. This is about evaluations, and I commend you all for wanting to become better evaluators. But this few moments and few minutes are about the speaker and what the speaker can do, and to take a little bit from Ravi, to remove some of that blindness of your evaluator. Now, how many speakers are here? That's it? I like asking a question where everybody raises their hand, but as we're looking at what the speakers can do, and the speaker really needs and wants that feedback, that evaluation that will empower them toward their next speech. And one of the first things we can do, and this is going to be kind of a duh sort of moment, but I'm going to tell you why, is use your manual. Give manual speeches. Now, I'm trying to think how long I've been in Toastmasters or how many speeches I've given. I think I've been through 9 CCs, 12 different AC manuals, and all the Better Club, Better Speaker series. It's somewhere over 150 speeches. And for some of you, I don't know if you've ever gotten into that rut that I was in a few years ago where you just seem to hit a plateau. And one of the things I realized was, yeah, I'm giving a manual speech and somebody's taking the evaluation portion and they're answering the questions, but I actually wasn't looking at the projects and using them as they're designed. I just grabbed one this morning, the entertaining speaker, and on page 4 it says, be sure to read each project at least twice. Twice. I think I went 2 years without reading a word of what the project is. I just, here's what I want to speak on, and I went and gave my speech and received my evaluation. And I look back here on project 4, it's about the dramatic talk. And I do like to kind of give some dramatic talks, but this one talks about describing the setting. And then making clear the nature of the conflict, personalize the story, build realistic images, establish a mood of excitement and drama, and then keep the story moving and building. As we're developing our speeches, are we setting and seeing these goals and really working on something specific? That way, one, your evaluator has some specific things to be looking for and looking at. And I liken this to, for years ago now, I ran a lot, and now I coach runners. And when you are in a sport and working out in a sport, you have specific things you want to work on each and every day. And as speakers in Toastmasters, that's what we're trying to do, is get a little bit better each and every day. From a runner's point of view, one day I may coach people to put in the miles, get that base down, and the next day it might be to do some sprints or some hill work or work on some core type things. each day is specific to the needs of that day and that time. So one, use the manual to help guide your speeches and build your speeches. The second one goes beyond the manual, a little bit deeper. Have personal goals that you really want to address and work on. Now, there's things that we all do that sometimes we seem to carry on forever. And Keith has mentioned this to me once or twice or 12 times, that in my speeches, for a long time, I had this habit of my motions, my body language was almost always the same. Keith came up calling it a dance one day. And then I looked at, because we do take the speeches, and there I could see it. It's one step here, one step there, 2 steps over here. And the same thing went on and on and on. So those are some specific things that I wanted to work on to get rid of. So to have those in mind. And then the third point, and this is the important one, communicate to your evaluator. How many times have we gotten up and given an evaluation and never spoke to the speaker? Didn't know what their project was or what their speech was about until the moment you heard them speak. That's really going into it blind. If you know who your evaluator is, and hopefully your clubs have a schedule out in advance, email your evaluator what your project is. Maybe give them an outline of what your speech is going to be on, so they're not coming into it as blind. And Carol talked about, as an evaluator, coming up with a way to make some notes. Use that information in advance to know what things you're going to look for.
A question, would you ever give your evaluator your outline or your speaking notes that you're talking from?
I have in the past, depending on what I wanted the evaluator to accomplish.
Okay.
Usually not, because I like to do a lot of twists and a lot of turns in my speeches, so I don't want to give those totally away. But I will meet with the evaluator, and Saturday Morning Live, we actually have team meetings where the evaluation team meets with the speaker for 15 minutes before the club meeting. And it's a great way for the speaker to say, these are some of the specific things I want you to look for and comment upon. Of course, the evaluator is going to give all the other type of feedback, but as a speaker then, if you know there's something you want to accomplish, they can address that for you clearly. And then the last point, as far as just communicating that, is how many of us write a good introduction to our speech? One that clearly defines why this topic, why you, and what role should the audience play, if any. Setting up the speech so you don't have to, there's a lot of things you don't have to put in your speech that a good introduction can cover for you. And that will set that tone and that idea. So next time you speak, I challenge you, give your evaluator the information they need so they're not as blind as they would have been. Thank you.
Croal has been a Toastmaster for 23 years and a member of Saturday Morning Live for 17 of those. She was the 2007-2008 District 6 Governor. She works as a manager at a hospital laboratory where she draws on her evaluation skills every day. Today, she will share how developing evaluation skills will help you in your professional life. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Pat Croal.
Good morning, everyone. For our presentation today, I'm very excited to be here, not only with my colleagues, but all of you, and you're interested in the topic of evaluation, both in what you are doing in your club, what your club is doing, and what you can do to bring that outside of your club and apply it to your professional life. So, because I always like to have everybody raise their hands. How many of you in the room are evaluators? All right, everybody, Tim. I got them all. I think I got everybody. If you didn't raise your hand, maybe you're just not as comfortable yet, or you haven't built up that skill. But the club environment, everything you do in the club environment, everything from the timer, the counter, the grammarian, The evaluator, the general evaluator, everything we do prepares us for our life. How many of you have been in Toastmasters less than 1 year? Okay, great. Well, less than 1 year. So one person, one of you that raised your hand, have you seen the value that you gained yet on the evaluation skills in any of the roles in your personal life? Would anybody like to comment on that? One of our newer in the back? Yeah.
Yeah, evaluation improves our strengths and as well as where we are weaknesses. Yeah, evaluator point out the weaknesses, and that's how we will come up, make our weaknesses into strengths.
Yes.
That's how we will improve. I improved a lot with my evaluators.
And it's great to hear from your evaluator, right? And isn't it a lot better to hear in Toastmasters what you can do to improve than it is to hear from your manager? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm a manager. I have a number of people that I work with and I give feedback to on a regular basis, whether it's daily, weekly. And I'm guessing a lot of you in the room are the same way. Whether you're a manager, a supervisor, a lead, a colleague, anything that you do in your work, our evaluation skills are meant to help each other, help other people improve, contribute more to their development, to the development of the group, the goals of the organization. So I've developed what I like to call, Carol's going to laugh, I showed it, the P technique. And not the P for Pat, the P-E-E technique, the P technique. And this is something that I just developed here as I was getting ready for this. And the components of the P technique are things you've heard before. So I'm just going to review them and how you can apply evaluation skills that you learn in Toastmasters in your professional life. So first of all, the P. We heard Tim talk about it. We heard Keith. We actually heard every one of our speakers before me talk about this. P means to plan ahead and personalize your language. To plan ahead. So in your professional life, what does that mean? We've heard about it in Toastmasters. What we want to do is speak to the evaluator, having a discussion in advance. What does it mean? Get to know people that you're giving the feedback for. What are their goals? What are their hopes and dreams? What is it that you want to convey to them? So you as a leader, you as a colleague, you plan ahead. So you know their short and long-term goals, you prepare in advance. You don't just sit down with somebody for the very first time and say, I'd like to give you this feedback. I don't know where you're going here, but I'd like to give you this feedback. How empowering would that be? Oftentimes when that happens, and I know when people are newer at giving feedback, there might be a little bit of a deflated nature to getting feedback if that skill hasn't been quite as developed yet. So know the goals, excuse me, both short and long term, and prepare in advance. Personalize your language. Make the conversation that you're having with someone about them, not about you. You know, when I was in your role, I did this and I did that. And and I think it would be really, really great that if you did it like I did it, really, and when I did this, it's all about me. And if I was talking to Wani, it's like, well, gosh, I'm not you. I might not even want to be like you. But it doesn't matter. It's really making it about them. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What do you think you could improve upon? How can I help you? Speak directly to the person. If I'm with somebody and I'm having eye contact with them, whether it's in a small room or a bigger room, if I'm having a conversation, I look right directly at them. I will get the head nods, I'll get the inferences, I'll get the body languages. We'll have a nonverbal and a verbal conversation. So really, make it about them, speak directly to them, and use language like we use in evaluations in our club. I observed, I see, in my opinion, I suggest. Again, it is still, pardon me, I've got a frog in my throat. It is about my perceptions as the person giving the feedback. The person receiving it then decides, just like in evaluations, how to take that and move. And it helps empower them to make a decision to change. The E in PEE is to evaluate on their goals and to their objectives and their behaviors. If you're a manager or a supervisor and you're meeting with somebody to talk to them about their performance, whether it's good performance or a performance that needs to be improved, again, it's what you observe and what their objectives are based on their goals. So avoid again the judgments. You know, you're not a good employee. You're not a good team member. Again, give them the feedback. What I observed you using your emotions in a destructive manner in a situation. Here's what I suggest. Suspend your emotions and then walk away from a situation and come back and deal with it later if you're giving somebody some specific feedback. Again, avoiding that judgment call. Tell them what you see and perceive. This is what I observed. This is what I'm seeing. And connect their goals with something measurable and be very specific. Remember the project that they worked on that was a big success and give them that feedback. Give them something very specific that you observed and what the team thought of their experiences, especially as a leader or a colleague. And the second E in the PEE technique is to empower them into action. We've heard about the word empower many times. Evaluation and feedback is all about empowering people to action, helping them see that the feedback that you're giving them may be a big help to them. It may not be. They get to choose. That's the word empower. Empower them to make that choice based on the feedback that you're giving them. So praise them. Praise them for their accomplishments, what they did well, for their effort. Even if it didn't come out the way that they expected. Even if there was a little bit of faltering or it wasn't wholly successful. Again, praise them for their effort and the gifts and strengths that they brought to that project or they brought to that team. Challenge them. Look at where they're at. Give them a stretch goal. Again, look at what their strengths are and move that beyond. We do that in Toastmasters all the time. This time, Pat, you really did great with your body language and gestures. Next time, I encourage you, and I've heard this from Ravi, use the entire room. Move a bit. Give people a chance to really see the whole you. Again, stretch them out a bit more. Use their strengths. If they're a speaker, a team member, a colleague, use their strengths to help propel them. Focusing on their weaknesses may be successful to help get them out of a rut, but then really look at their strengths to really propel them into action and meet your team's goals. Involve them. Ask them what they think. What do they think of this feedback? And so that they can actually give feedback based on what you're giving them. And offer your mentorship. Offer resources. Offer whatever you think that they need that would help them be successful. So this is the P technique. Plan, evaluate, and empower. Plan, evaluate, and empower. And with all of these, your team member in the real world will be as successful as they can be.
I now want to invite up the speaker. And if you have questions, let us hear them. We can also talk after the session. But let's hear. Yes?
I have a question about, I guess it's called open evaluation, where instead of just one person coming up and evaluating the speech, we've been talking among our club about doing that. I'm relatively new, so I haven't seen it in practice yet, but just like some feedback, I guess, about how you think that, I can see a lot of value in it of not just having one, like you said, there's 6 views of the elephant, and we're just getting one right now.
All right, I will take that question.
Okay.
What we do is we meet with the speaker ahead of time. We divide the manual questions by different evaluators. So, and we usually group them together thematically. So a particular evaluator will take 2 closely related questions.
Okay.
And of course, all the other feedback they would provide. So they aren't restricting themselves, but that way we don't have all that overlap.
I really like the matrix that you pointed out in your speech, the pluses and the minuses.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
When transferring the comments over, you have to be sure not to go, and the positives were, and the bad part was.
Right.
But it's just the thinking about it that way.
Could I add something to
Yes,
his question?
please.
In another club, one of our U.S. Bank clubs, the assigned evaluators for the day actually meet after all the speeches are done during table topics, and they talk among themselves about each of the speeches, so they help each other to bring some points to their evaluation for their assigned speakers. That's another way to do an open evaluation.
So they skip table topics then?
Right, they skip table topics and
Okay.
they talk among themselves outside the room
Okay.
about all the speeches and what they plan to share in their evaluation. Sometimes they pick up a new point from
Right.
the other person.
That's good, okay.
It's good. Also, on a completely different way you can do the team evaluation, I have noticed that sometimes attendance at meetings falls off a little over the summer and people aren't quite as willing to prepare for speeches to give them. If you set up team evaluations over the summer, it gets more people involved in the meeting, but with less having to prepare ahead of the meeting. So it tends to be a little more popular in the summer.
But how does that get more speeches in the summer? I
It
don't
doesn't give you
understand.
more speeches, it gives you more people with roles.
Okay,
It actually, it works out in a way.
okay. All right, thanks.
Jane?
I have a question that happened probably to Ravi, if you're the speaker. What happened at my last club meeting is the first speaker gave a really dramatic talk on the fact that he got a permit to carry, okay? The second speaker was more of a new speaker, and that speech really impacted her. That kind of took the wind out of her. And then it was her turn to come up front to give her speech, and she lost some track of it because that first speech really impacted. Would have she been better off to just bow out at that time when she was introduced, to just say, I'm sorry, I can't give my speech today, I'm just not prepared? She asked me that question a day after our meeting, and I just didn't know really what to answer her on that, other than she could have bowed out if she felt that she was being impacted by the first speech.
Actually, being a new speaker, I've come across this, and typically in tail weavers, we will put the more inexperienced speakers as being the first speakers, leaving the more advanced speakers to be speaker number 3 or speaker number 2. So it's an issue of speaking order. Leave the newer speakers at the beginning and leave the more advanced speakers towards the end of
I think that's how it was. I think the second speaker was a little, because she's in 2 clubs, so I think we had her in the right place, or they could have been equal type thing. But my question is again, she bowed out? Should have, when it impacted, no matter if you're one in the advanced manuals and your second speaker and your first speaker is just in the CC. I mean, what should they do when the first speech really impacted them?
I'll make it quick. I don't think anyone should quit, because that is another experience. What if you're going after a good speaker? One technique I have picked up from other speakers here is that we tend to use the good points or the strong points of the speaker before you. So always focus on that.
Yeah.
I picked up something on Carol and Keith. Pat did for all of us, and Tim did the blind part of my speech.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, one last question.
Hi, I'm Michael Brown. I'm the Area 42 Governor. Pat, you said something that really impacted the way that I look at it, the evaluation, which is this. Also being a manager, I see that evaluation tool as being really key to the workplace and being able to provide appropriate feedback. And one of the things that you mentioned specifically was this idea of noting the observations. However, when it comes to the performance evaluation, a lot of times they do want you to provide that judgment. So how do you balance between the actual passing of the judgment that you have to have in the written documentation and the sort of verbal observation of performance?
You're right. I mean, just like you probably and a lot of people, we oftentimes get feedback from many different sources. Oftentimes there's judgment calls in the sources, 360. One of the ways that I balance some of the judgment calls versus observations, and you do, as a manager, as a leader, you do need to give some very specific, sometimes it could be toned as judgmental call, but I always look towards what our goals or objectives are, what we're looking at on our dashboard of goals, what that person really brings to the table. Typically in an evaluation, I feel more success, or evaluation, annual evaluation, I feel more success as a leader when I stay away from those judgment words, but really couch it, and then really it sounds like a euphemism, but it's, I don't mean it to be that way. It's really looking at the goals and looking at how, if that person's working towards that goal set without those judgment words. You know, you're not a good employee, you're not a good leader, you're not a good thing. Really going back to the behaviors that are expected for that. So I know it can be a fine line because you have to give it back. And I guess, I don't know if that helps at all, but that's what I would say.
Can I make a quick comment on that? Because I actually teach performance appraisals to companies. Never ever in a performance appraisal should there be a surprise that's negative. If it hasn't been addressed before the performance appraisal, you're doing a disservice to that employee. And a performance appraisal is about taking that employee from where they're at today and giving them goals and giving them motivation to give you a better year next year. So if you're caught in that point where you have to make judgment decisions or comments in the appraisal, you didn't do your job up to that point. So always strive to take care of those in one-on-one situations prior to that moment. And then you won't get into that situation on the performance appraisal.
So District 6 awards this certificate of appreciation to Carol Duling for giving this presentation. And they also received $25 for the research center.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't forget to fill up your evaluation forms and apply what you learned.
Where do we put the evaluation forms for today?
You can give it to me or you can.
Okay.
Yeah, there is also a spot at the registration table
Okay, great.
to turn in evaluation forms.
Or next one more comment on the question about the notes for giving them out.
Oh, yeah.
Don't too often because I don't stay in script very well. So,
Yeah, no, it's curious. I've had it done both ways.
yep. And it just depends on what the speaker wants to evaluate, how they want.